Double cab utes have topped Australian new car sales charts for the past 6 years. Their popularity has grown as the vehicles have gone to finishing school, coming a long way from their humble beginnings. What started out as workhorse vehicles have over the past decade broadened their appeal as family transport and weekend getaway cars. Today's double cab utes must have 5-star occupant protection, advanced safety tech, be comfortable in the daily grind, carry up to a tonne, tow up to 3.5 tonnes, and be capable off-road. No other vehicle type is pulled in so many different directions, which is why no one has yet made the perfect double cab ute. In many cases, buyer preferences will help decide which ute to buy, which makes this category one of the toughest to assess. So we assembled the best candidates for the 2022 Drive Car of the Year Double Cab Ute Award. The Nissan Navara received a midlife makeover last year with a bold front-end redesign, a new steering wheel and instrument cluster, and the addition of advanced safety tech. Engineers put a spanner on the suspension for yet another update to improve ride comfort, beef up the rear end to better handle a load, and increase the payload to be closer to the class leaders. While the Nissan Navara trails the Ford Ranger and Toyota HiLux in terms of on-road dynamics, our testing showed it isn't far behind the capability of the top two off-road. Indeed, the Navara is a cut above the newer Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT-50 twins when it comes to off-road ability. However, for all its merit and worthwhile improvements with the latest update, the Nissan Navara doesn't have the same bandwidth of ability as the other finalists here. A new Ford Ranger is just around the corner, due mid-2022, but continual improvements to the current generation Ford Ranger over the past decade have kept it at the top of its game. The Ford Ranger has the broadest bandwidth of capabilities among our finalists. It's the best to drive on-road and within a whisker of the Toyota HiLux off-road. The Ranger has also kept pace with the competition thanks to constant safety upgrades, and the twin-turbo 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel delivers strong power and good fuel economy. In our opinion, the 10-speed auto needs further calibration to prevent occasional clunking between gears. Nevertheless, the Ford Ranger once again impressed the judges with its overall polish on and off-road, but its relatively high price and some missing equipment standard on newer rivals saw the Ford Ranger not quite make the grade due to a technical knockout. The Toyota HiLux had a midlife update in 2020 when it gained a bold new front end, a bump in power and torque, and an increase in towing capacity to the industry benchmark of 3.5 tonnes. Our tests showed the Toyota HiLux is in another league when it comes to off-road prowess, with excellent ground clearance, wheel articulation, and a sophisticated traction control system that delivers serious mountain climbing ability. The judging team was divided on how the Toyota HiLux felt on the road. In the end, it came down to driver preference. Half the judges were happy to live with the HiLux's slightly busier suspension when unladen in return for better cargo carrying ability, while other judges preferred the plushness of the Ford Ranger, even though the rear end can sag under load. The Toyota HiLux 2.8 is noticeably perkier than before, and the 6-speed automatic gear shifts are more decisive and intuitive. In the end though, the Toyota HiLux was tripped at the final hurdle by the same issues that held back the Ford Ranger: a high price and some missing equipment that is standard on newer rivals. When the competition is this close, every feature counts.
A little bit more rain for you in our Drive Car of the Year for 2022 off-road testing, but we are forging ahead while getting wet, and our winner for Best Dual Cab 4-wheel drive for Drive Car of the Year 2022 is this, the Isuzu D-Max. Repeat winner it is too.
However, we have an objection this year. What do you call it in racing?
Post-race protest.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
right.
Sydney to Hobart.
That's right. We've kind of broken our own rules this year, and for the first time, I think in Drive Car of the Year history, we have joint winners in this segment, and winner number 2 is Mazda BT-50. Now these two utes, they have shared development right across the board, so they are twins under the skin effectively. Yeah. Engine, gearbox, suspension, steering, there is a lot of shared mechanicals between these two vehicles. But something has changed since last year, because you said D-Max won it last year, BT-50 came second, but this year This thing is a little bit more expensive, especially in that extra range specification. It's gone up by about $4,000, and that has been enough to bring these utes right close together.
Yeah, now normally most of our testing's done out here, right? We're out off-road, we're driving, we drive them on-road too, and we're behind the wheel, but we have, Glenn has, not us, crunched the numbers every which way. There's no more number crunching we can do. There's a spreadsheet with a million numbers on it. We just can't separate them.
You can't. We've cut it in as many directions as we can. Servicing costs, specifications, all the way from base spec to top spec, value for money, inclusions, just about everything. And it is a true photo finish. You cannot split these two, and so they are both deserved joint winners.
The judges were initially divided in this hotly contested segment, and it's an important one given our growing appetite for double cab utes. Judges who favoured on-road dynamics preferred the Ford Ranger. Judges who favoured off-road ability preferred the Toyota HiLux. And the updated Nissan Navara was praised for its good value in the STX grade, which we reckon is the sweet spot in the range. In the end though, it was hard to argue with the long list of standard features and safety tech for the money in the Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT-50 ranges. The Isuzu and Mazda twins ticked the most boxes across the most judging criteria, and when the votes came in, they came out on top.
A bit more than 12 months after its initial release, the Isuzu D-Max really still is quite impressive. Now, none of these dual cabs are perfect inside the cabin, but the D-Max is as good as any. It's well laid out, it's comfortable, good visibility, plenty of adjustment for the driver from the steering wheel and the seat, and the outward visibility is excellent whether you're on-road or off-road. I really like the switch gear. There's enough controls on the steering wheel without being too many. The infotainment system has a big screen, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, really easy controls to understand, and then of course the aircon controls below that. All in all, this is a functional cabin, and if you spend a lot of time in your vehicle, you're going to find it useful. It's got clever storage, cup and bottle holders, extra cup holders up in the dash, which I think are really clever the way they're positioned. And it's a dual cab that you're not going to hate spending long drives in. So I think it's really impressive that 12 months in, the shine hasn't really come off the D-Max too much. It's still right up at the top of the segment in just about every discipline.
As you might expect, the Mazda BT-50 and Isuzu D-Max are twins under the skin, and on the inside here, not a lot is different. However, there are a few key differences that buyers would want to know. One thing for me is the infotainment display. This is the same between the two cars, but I think it's a good system. It's a good size, the quality of the screen is good, and it's got all the mod cods you might want, like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, native navigation, and digital radio. However, I would love to see a volume knob on this thing. I do get a bit annoyed mashing the buttons up and down to try and turn the volume up and down quickly. But otherwise, it's a very well sorted and practical interior. However, I would love to see this BT-50 pick up a couple of things from the D-Max, maybe in future models. It's missing the storage up here, which is handy if you've got larger things you want to keep out of the way most of the time, and it's also missing the slide-out cup holders under each air vent on the end there. If you're pretty regular at buying coffee and driving around the road, it is handy having a couple of extra spots there to put your drinks.
One of my favourite old Australianisms, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, and that's very much the case back here. It's more of the same in the Isuzu D-Max, and if you're expecting huge differences between this and the BT-50, you ain't going to find them. There's more than enough room, I think, for adults. That's my driving position. I've got enough room to sit behind it. It's pretty comfortable, visibility's good, the window line is good so you can see out of it. Back seat is good, it's not too upright. You do get air vents, you do get a USB power point, you also get a takeaway bag hook there on the back of that seat. And all in all, like we said about the front of the cabin, these dual cabs aren't perfect, but if you're using this as a default family vehicle, if you have your kids and friends in the back seat, it's perfectly fine and it'll get the job done.
Like Trent said, there isn't a lot of difference between the Isuzu D-Max and the Mazda BT-50 inside, and that is particularly apparent in the back here. You'll be very hard pressed to find any differences at all whatsoever. But that means the D-Max is good in the back, and so is the BT-50. When you compare it to other utes in this segment, judges did note that this has a lot of the things that you do want if you wanted to use this car as a general daily driver, maybe a family car as well, along with all the weekend stuff and work that you might be doing. It's got air vents and it's got a USB outlet. Not all other utes have that. It's got map pockets there, it's got a handy little hook, and just generally speaking, there's enough space for adults to sit in the back here, like Trent mentioned. You have to remember this BT-50 and D-Max is sitting on a platform that is a little bit bigger than previous generations, especially for the Isuzu. It's a good wheelbase and it's a good length overall, so that affords enough legroom and headroom for people to be comfortable in the back.
The Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT-50 twins share the same 3-litre engine with 140 kilowatts and 450 Nm outputs, paired to a 6-speed auto or a 6-speed manual. Only the badges on the engine covers are different.
We've spent a fair amount of time off-road in these four-wheel drive utes, assessing how good they are, because that is an important element in this segment. However, it is not the be-all and end-all. This is, in many ways, the modern-day family car for a lot of Australians. It's there for work, it's there for family, it's there for weekends and holidays as well. So it's being pulled in a lot of different directions in terms of disciplines. In terms of off-road in particular, the Mazda BT-50 and by extension the Isuzu D-Max, they're not the best in the segment. If you want something like a distinction or a high distinction even, you might be looking at the Toyota HiLux, the Ford Ranger or the Nissan Navara, but these two cars are quite good off-road still. They're a strong, solid pass or even a credit. They've got a locking rear differential, and they do have a decent traction control system as well. However, they don't both work together at the same time. Some things I do like about this car off-road is the gearing and the engine. This is a lazy 3-litre turbo diesel. It doesn't need any turbo boost in terms of making torque off idle. It's nice and easy to use in terms of throttle modulation and just controlling that right amount of momentum off-road. That's really good. It's got decent approach and departure angles for the segment, and underbody protection is actually pretty good. That's all good stuff. And of course, it's a good place to build up a four-wheel drive into something more capable and more comfortable for touring and four-wheel driving, that sort of thing. Look at tires, look at suspension, look at wheels, all those usual suspects. The Mazda BT-50 and the Isuzu D-Max are both well served in that regard. But like I said, this is the modern day family car for a lot of Australians, so it's got to be good at more than just off-roading. And this is where you start to see the BT-50 and the D-Max start to shuffle towards the top of the pack. This is a ute that's not necessarily the absolute best in any one discipline, but across the board it scores highly almost everywhere. Now, the judges noted that the Mazda BT-50 and by extension the Isuzu D-Max are very strong in terms of safety, and that is a very important element for this segment. It's got autonomous emergency braking, it's got rear cross traffic alert, it's got traffic sign recognition, it's got a lot of good stuff going on in that regard. It's even got a front center airbag here, and that is something that none of the other utes have in case of a big accident. And another element where the Mazda BT-50 does quite well is just general refinement and comfort for driving around town and on country roads. It's got electric steering, it's a little bit light. You might have utes with a bit more steering feel and that sort of thing going on, but I would argue that that's not necessarily a very important thing for this segment. This electric steering adds a sense of refinement to the BT-50 and the Isuzu D-Max, and it's well tuned for being easy to drive and park at low speeds, and it throws in a little bit of weight when speeds pick up, so you know what the car is doing all the time while you're driving around. Ride comfort is quite good, especially in these higher spec utes that have a more comfort oriented spring. We've done load testing with them before and they have performed well in that regard, and they're also pretty good at towing up towards 3 tons, around that mark. And like I said before, this segment, a lot of people write off four-wheel drive utes for being a bit rough and a bit crude in comparison to things like sedans and SUVs. But I would challenge anyone to find a vehicle that is being pulled in as many directions as the four-wheel drive ute. They've got to tow, they've got to go off-road, they've got to have a big payload, but they've also got to be safe, refined and comfortable, all at a decent price. Now, none of these utes, especially in the higher grades, could be called cheap these days, I know, but they have to be good at a lot of things. So they truly are the jack of all trades. Maybe not the master of any, but they are pretty good across the board. And I think that is why so many Australians are buying these four-wheel drive utes for the multi-purpose angle. And the fact of it is, when you consider all of those elements, this Mazda BT-50 and the Isuzu D-Max are at the top of the field.
Sam made the point that these dual cabs need to be automotive decathletes, and he's not wrong. We really do expect a hell of a lot from this particular platform and this particular segment, and in fact, you could argue that we expect more of these vehicles than just about anything else that we test. They need to be good on-road, they need to be good off-road, they need to carry the family in comfort and safety, and safety is a big deal because we now expect that. They need to be able to tow, and they need to be quite useful in general terms and fuel efficient. And that's in addition to having a big tray out the back to carry gear around. So I think the fact that the Isuzu D-Max can do what it does in such a competent fashion and do it in comfort while also being safe is really, really noteworthy. Now, our testing has illustrated that if you really want to do hardcore off-road driving and do it regularly, this isn't the kind of dual cab that you buy. That's what our adventure dual cab segment is all about. It's about buying a more proficient factory standard off-roader, but for regular light duty off-roading, for towing, for driving on-road, on dirt roads, on sealed roads, for spending 5 days a week in the vehicle and then going away on the weekend with the family, this Isuzu D-Max is fantastic. It's practical, it drives really well, it's comfortable on road, and it's safe. I think that's really something that's noteworthy. It's a safe option for the family. But all in all, this does transition well from on-road to regular off-road driving. Not the really, really tough stuff, but regular off-road driving like what we're doing now. It does it really easily. And I think the fact that the D-Max was as good when it was released as it was means that just over 12 months later, it's still impressing us in the way that it performs both on-road and off.
As we said at the start, double cab utes are one of the most difficult categories to judge given their massive bandwidth of ability. And buyers will favour the things they are looking for: comfort, power, towing or off-road ability. While all finalists have their strengths, in the end the Isuzu D-Max and Mazda BT-50 twins came out on top. They ticked the most boxes across the broadest range of criteria and should be applauded for democratising advanced safety features. And for 2022, they are worthy winners.